that is role of food preservatives and emulsifiers. And to deliver this talk, may I invite Dr. Ashish Kumar.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank my teacher, Dr. Chaudhary, for inviting me to this beautiful city. So I've been given a role to talk about the role of food preservatives and emulsifiers. I've slightly modified my topic, and I would not just cover food preservatives and emulsifier. I would cover, in general, what are food additives. And also, the modification which I did is that since there's very less literature on role of these additives on fatty liver, so I'll just talk their effect on general health. So what are food additives? These are substances which we add to food to make them taste better, last longer, and look nicer. And so what are the classes of food additives? They could be preservatives. So preservatives prevent spoilage of food due to various microorganisms, fungi, bacteria. Then there are emulsifiers. These are substances which try to maintain the emulsion. So they allow water and oil to remain mixed together in an emulsion form. For example, in mayonnaise, ice cream, and milk. Then water food colorants, as the name indicates, these colors the food beautifully. Then food flavors and food enhancers are there, as the name indicates. Then there are high intensity, low calorie sweeteners. Then there are certain antioxidants which are added as food additives. These are vitamin C and other additives which inhibit the effect of oxygen on food, so prevent the food from getting rancid. Then there are acidulants which are added to make the flavor of the food much sharper. And they also act as preservatives like vinegar, citric acid, tartaric acid, malic acids. And then there are anti-caking agents which prevent the powders such as milk powder from caking or sticking together. So the food additives can be of three types. They can be natural, like substances which are found naturally. For example, we can add beetroot juice to color the food in red. Then they could be natural identical. That means these are synthesized copies of the substances that exist in nature. So they are just synthesized, but the substance is natural. Then majority of the food additives are artificial. So these are synthesized substances that do not exist in nature, but they are added. So safety of food additives in international platforms are usually governed by WHO mandated committee, which meets from time to time, and they actually study various food additives, and they recommend whether it can be allowed, whether at what doses it can be allowed and what cannot be allowed. And similar society is there in India, which is known as Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which also meets regularly, and they permit certain additives and they ban certain additives. And all these societies have mandated that all the additives are labeled as coding. So, for example, colors are coded as E100, E160 and all. Preservatives are coded as E200 and similar way. So in any packaged food, these codes will be given rather than the individual name of the additive. For example, this bread which was from my home, and when I looked at the label ingredients, it said that it contains emulsifier 471, acidity regulator 260, and flow treatment agent 510. So these are the codes of additives which are there. Similarly, this is a familiar Maggi, and if you look at that label, it says acidity regulator 330, 500, and so on. Similarly, there was another substance in my home which said there's no preservative, no xanthan gums. So there are certain packaged food which contain preservatives, certain don't contain, and they mention it that way. So what are the hazards of additives? Multiple studies have shown that additives may have, in spite of they being regulated by these bodies, but they do have certain hazards. For example, they may pose certain cancer risk. Certain food additives are linked to inflammatory bowel disease. Certain additives are linked to gastrotoxicity and hepatotoxicity. then certain can cause cholestatic liver disease, and some food additives are known to impact the gut microbiome. So I'll just briefly go over one or two of them. For preservatives, so preservatives avoid spoilage of food, and the examples of some of the preservatives are sodium benzoate, sodium nitrite, benzoic acid, BHA, BHT. So sodium benzoate, it is used in carbonated drinks, pickles, and sauce. Generally considered safe because it is rapidly excreted. The FDA allows a certain concentration of sodium benzoate in the food. However, when sodium benzoate is combined in vitamin C as in soft drinks and exposed to elevated temperatures and light, it can become carcinogenic. Benzene may be released. And it also can cause hyperacidity activity in children. It can cause low-grade inflammation, which is relevant with the fatty liver disease. And some of the studies which have been done in animals that showed that sodium benzoate and certain others can inhibit leptin release, so which may promote obesity. Similarly, similar studies, animal studies and lab studies are there for other preservatives like sodium nitrate. It can be carcinogen, it can cause miscarriage, BHA, it can also impact liver, BHT. So I'm not going into any details of these, but most of the preservatives have some evidence in favor of being good, some have in favor of being bad for the health. Similarly, emulsifiers, they allow water and oil to remain mixed together in emulsion, as in mayonnaise, ice cream, homogenized milk. Examples of emulsifiers are multiple, like carboxymethylcellulase, guar gum, polyglycerol esterase, and polysorbate. So there was one or two papers here which showed some hazards of emulsifier, like these emulsifiers can cause impact in gut microbiota, it can cause metabolic syndrome, it can promote colitis. And there was a randomized controlled feeding study where they fed people emulsifier-free diet along with one of the emulsifier, that is carboxymethylcellulose, and it showed that the gut microbiota was affected by these. What are about other additives? So many of these are known to have some of the adverse effects, like flavor enhancers, monosodium glutamate has been known. So many of the coloring agents, artificial sweetener like aspartame impacts gut microbiome. So bottom line is that most packaged food contains food additives such as preservatives and emulsifiers. And since they are given by code names, so for general public, it is very difficult to identify whether they are containing harmful food additive or they are containing useful for health. Food additives are regulated and approved by government agencies, so they are considered as generally recognized as safe. This term is given as far as major acute effects and obvious carcinogenic potential are concerned, but their effect on microbiome, metabolic disease, and inflammation is not clear and may be adverse for at least some of these additives. So I would recommend that avoid regular and excessive use of any of the packaged food. And for daily needs, it's better to replace packaged food with the fresh food. So instead of regularly consuming bread, we can use rotis. And read the food labels, that is very essential, and try to buy those food which don't have such additives. Thank you for your attention.